Hey, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox with episode 3 of Fox on West Virginia University Mountaineer Sports. And we are recapping what was the debacle in Happy Valley this past Saturday. Penn State upending the Mountaineers 38-15 in State College, a night game, a season opener to open the 2023 season. And what I have to say in response, and I know I'm a day late on starting onto this video. I usually do these on Sundays. Now it's Mondays with Labor Day weekend. I really just wanted to take it all in from Mountaineer Nation over the last 24, 36 hours. And what I really just want to tell everybody is everybody needs to chill. Everybody really needs to take a step back and stop the overreaction Sunday, Monday, thinking the sky is falling, criticizing these players and criticizing the coach even to this point. Because what I want to say is, and this is what people just will not accept the fact, and why you can be angry at a 2021 matchup against Maryland, or you can even last year go absolutely crazy and rip your hair out and throw fire, spit fire about the Pitt game, this, that, and the other thing. But there are about 24-ish programs in the country that are playing on just an absolute different playing field, that are, because of what they're bringing to the table in terms of brand and NIL dollars, and in the very near future 2024 with TV revenue and everything they've been bring the blue bloods. And I know that's a kind of a loose term because you might think of blue bloods as only maybe a top 5, but there's really about 20 programs in this country that just are on a whole different stratosphere right now in the world of college football, and Penn State is one of them. There, as I said on the last video, the Northeastern power, as far west as to Ohio, the entire mid-Atlantic to the Northeast into New England, they just own it. And they've really just taken a stranglehold over this region of the country, and they are just recruiting at a whole different level. And that was the difference in this game. It wasn't necessarily the X's and the O's. It was the Jimmies and the Joes. It was the backyard brawl atmosphere on steroids against a team in Penn State that would have just absolutely lit that 2022 Pitt team to shreds. And West Virginia played hard, gave its absolute effort in this contest. And that's what I want to talk about in today's episode, and where some things went well, where some things didn't go well. But what I just have to say is, take a step back, is because, and I know that anything can happen. Like we saw in the 2006 Orange Bowl, we saw in the 2008 Fiesta Bowl, we saw in the 2012 Orange Bowl, that sometimes that, David can conquer Goliath. Goliath and in West Virginia can beat some of these upper echelon teams. But I'm sorry, that is not where this program is right now in today's age of college football. So if you want to criticize, the recruiting, the retention, just where West Virginia is at from a roster standpoint, and having those that's a different discussion that we can have. And, I do have in periods of time on this programming, and that I would do on Twitter, is that that big things that happen in the greater landscape of college football. You might not think that the Pac-12 completely dissolving out west, thousands of miles away from Morgantown, West Virginia, but how that impacts downstream, down 10 years into the future. Pitt and Syracuse decisions to upend the Big East and it completely falling apart, and West Virginia joining a conference in which it's completely misplaced in the greater landscape of college football, and it not keeping up an NIL, prior to it becoming legal, and it not paying its head coach in the top 25 in college football, and all of these little things that whenever Sunday comes after a Saturday and West Virginia is playing some of these big boys in college football, a la Penn State, there are so many things that have to be ready years in advance for West Virginia to get to that point where it can, for a 4-hour period, go toe-to-toe with a big boy and everything have to fall right just to beat them. So again, Look at the numbers throughout the last, 118 years of matchups between Penn State and West Virginia, and how West Virginia has done in these contests. For the most, other than 9 times, and just twice since Don Nealon took over this program, or I think three times or something, in those like matchups since he became the head coach, Penn State has dominated this series, absolutely dominated it. And it's because of so many things that have gone well over the years for Penn State, even though, you look at the topography and you look at the landscape of what State College, Pennsylvania looks like versus Morgantown, West Virginia, and in the greater landscape of things, they're not all that too different of colleges and everything else. But it's just they are just a recruiting power. They're put guys in the NFL type of power, and they have a lot of things going for them, right? Even though, a stadium that, from hearing from some of the other West Virginia fans who went to this contest, is about 45 years outdated. And look at what everything that Milan Pushkar's been through. But I'll digress off that point. I just wanted to, start off today's episode with saying that, like, all of the vitriol and all of the hatred and all of the frustration, I understand it. I truly do. And no one feels it more so than me, especially over the course of these last 2 years since that Maryland contest. And you can point to that as being the moment in time when West Virginia dropped from about a, tier 3 program in college football down to a tier 4. And we're trying to build ourselves way back into that third tier, contend to then try and push up back on into the second tier, where West Virginia was back in the late 2000s. So, speaking of, 4 hours, was that just not a like 4 hour throw up fest of watching that NBC production? That was absolutely disgusting. Ugh, I hated it. From Michael Robinson on the pregame show to it just being, a promotion of all the places in State College and the history of Penn State, to only showing Penn State come out onto the field before kickoff. I mean, it felt as if West Virginia was Sauron's orc army, and West Virginia, and Penn State was the good guys who were going to, just vanquish the evil into Mordor and put them finally away. And just, it was just absolutely gross from everything. Todd Blackledge being on the call. I don't even think it was necessarily Todd Blackledge who really was any sort of a bother listening to the program. Is Noah Eagle's influence almost onto Todd Blackledge, just wanting to constantly promote and talk about Penn State, and just West Virginia was this, little insignificant team that they just needed to get through and onward and upward to this team winning a national championship. It was, and that's what I talked about this on a few episodes ago, is West Virginia in the force of college football has to be a disruptor, has to cut against the grain, has to be the David versus the Goliath all the time, upset what the opposing teams and the media want. Oh, well, West Virginia is going to ruin Penn State's day. And oh dear, what are they? They can't do this. They can't upset the order of what's supposed to be in the grand scheme of things of college football. That's the thing. You got to take no prisoners. You have to offer no apologies. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case on Saturday between him. And I think that's adding to the angst and the frustration is, West Virginia upset so many of these blue blood programs, from a Georgia, from an Oklahoma to a Clemson, back 15, almost 20 years ago now. But now it's just the game has changed, where even the differences between, a West Virginia and Oklahoma at this time, or a West Virginia and Georgia at this time, are just so much different, so vast different places from then and now. And you might say, well, Carson, that's just, you're just making excuses. No, I'm really not. I'm just giving you the reality of the situation. And it's very rare. And I mean, thankfully, we do get these types of non-conference week 1 games anymore, where we see a potential, Appalachian State try and upset a Penn State just, what was it, 7 years ago. But for the most part, once this world of college football changes, And we go to these two super conferences in the SEC and the Big Ten, and then the third and fourth, Big 12 and ACC, and we'll see what happens out of those two conferences. Then there, I don't know what non-conference competition is going to look like then later in college football, but it's just like you'll see a Wyoming perhaps knock off a Texas Tech, and that's what's great about college football is these opportunities for these programs to go and do these things. So Texas State beat a Baylor. But it's just so hard when you're a middle class program like West Virginia, especially at this point in time, with how hot that Penn State is, with its quarterback, with its running backs, with its offensive line, its defense. Anyway, all right. What I do want to say is, how about West Virginia bringing the most out of Pennsylvania football fans these past 2 years? Penn State setting its fourth highest attendance record in stadium history at over 110,000 last year. West Virginia bringing 72,000 to Acrisure Stadium against Pitt. So you can't say that West Virginia doesn't add value to college football, because clearly it does. Clearly it gets people to watch on TV. Clearly it gets people to show up to stadiums. If only these two teams and three teams, including Pitt, could play each other more frequently because they're in the same conference. Oh, what a novel idea right there. Anyway, as for the game itself, I'll walk by from the first quarter. The fourth quarter ended a little abruptly because we don't really have too much to play in the fourth quarter. I was really proud of West Virginia, even on just that first drive, knowing how loud Acrisure Stadium was on the first offensive series last year, to how loud I was thinking it was going to be at Beaver Stadium, and watching it on TV, it was plenty loud, with the music situation at Beaver Stadium just being unreal and keeping the fans engaged throughout long stretches of this period. So the crowd was raucous when West Virginia had the ball first, picking up an offensive drive, an offensive first series. I mean, Ollie Straw pinning Penn State on its own 6-yard line. On the opposite way for Penn State, I got to really credit Drew Aller. The 40 to 50-yard bomb that he threw down the field to Keandre Lambert-Smith, stepping up into the pocket, which he did many a times in this contest, extremely well. Truly a player who's beyond his years, even just making his first collegiate start. It was incredible. I mean, throwing kind of across his body as he's stepping up and just throwing a strike 40 to 50 yards down the field, just past an outstretched Aubrey Burke's arm to potentially deflect the ball. But Smith Lambert just waltzed right into the end zone for the easy score. So really a worst case scenario for West Virginia. You give the ball to Penn State, and then Penn State on its first offensive series goes down and scores a touchdown. So you didn't like that feeling, but you thought if West Virginia could respond, and this is where I really liked what West Virginia did on its next defensive possession, getting a paw on Day Hawkins, getting a paw on a Drew Aller pass, almost intercepted by Beanie Bishop one of two times. And really it was the second one that was the more egregious time, that he had an opportunity to come up with an interception and just didn't. But big pass breakup on their next defensive possession. And then West Virginia responding finally then, I think this time into the second quarter, going on a 69-yard drive in which it had a fourth down conversion, the 37-yard pass completion down the field to Devin Carter, some big runs by C.J. Donaldson, 7-7 to make this a ball game early on. But, then responding right back was Penn State on the next drive after the touchdown. And that's where really I thought you could say you understand getting punked early on the first series, but man, is this going to be a really tough sledding day when Aller's playing this well and the West Virginia defense just was absolutely not. He had 5 completions on the next series, including a run for 5 yards. Just a lot of misalignments, it looked like, was a theme of the contest for West Virginia's defense in this game, just letting open receivers get way too much room, not having really truly contested grabs on the day. So Penn State struck right back, making it 14-7. I think where Garrett Green missed a golden opportunity for West Virginia, was with 9 minutes to play in the second quarter, 4th and 5 at the Penn State 43. West Virginia ran a crossing pattern with Traylon Ray and Cole Taylor. He kind of threw it a little too hurriedly, didn't really hit either single one of them, missing both, and West Virginia wasn't able to convert. I thought if West Virginia could continue to, rebut score with score, go back into the half, closer to half, a 14-14 game, that would have been an opportunity. Of course, then Penn State responds with 2 drives to end the half, in which its kicker Sanders Sahaydak missed both field goal attempts, and that's when I was going loco. That's when I was like, he missed it once, he missed it twice. This is where it was like moments of opportunity for West Virginia to capitalize. Like, you don't get these kind of opportunities, and that would have been really a critical punch to West Virginia early in the game, to be down potentially 20-7, which they should have been really. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. To start out the second half, if you thought if West Virginia could just get a stop here and respond, make it a 14-14 game, at least you're not going to get blown out in this regard to make it more of a contest. And this is where I got to be a little critical. I think, a little bit of blame can go toward the referee in this situation, but also to Cortez Bram. There was a play of a 2nd and 7 on West Virginia's, I think, 36-yard line. He looks over at the female ref and says something either wanting to either be on or be off. But unfortunately, because when he said that, she makes a motion over to him. He moves at the exact time in which the ball is being snapped, and he gets called for a penalty, negating a 15-yard rush by Justin Johnson. On the next 2 plays, unfortunately, Garrett Green gets rushed. They only get a yard on a pass completion to Traylon Davis in the flat, and West Virginia forced a punt. Penn State then scores on its next possession, putting themselves up 2 scores. And this is really when you start to feel as if the game's slipping away. Outside of a 2-score, possession, you really thought that that's where West Virginia needed to keep it, to a game. And it just didn't happen. So this is another pivotal moment in the game. West Virginia's 1st and 10, inside 4 minutes to play, third quarter, down 21-7. Green had just picked up a 4th down conversion. A 3-yard screen pass to Devin Carter. Okay, 2nd and 7, you understand. CJ Donaldson, a rush that doesn't go anywhere. So now you're 3rd and medium. And the dumbest either play call or decision of the night. Why, oh, why, oh, why are you throwing a deep ball into the end zone to Preston Fox? I just don't get it. 4th and 7 incompletion. You figured then and there that was the way that Aller was playing in that contest. Why, oh, why are you throwing it to Preston Fox to be the savior of this game on that type of a low leverage, low percentage pass into the end zone to try and, win, to try and get you back into it? I have no idea. So then, of course, Penn State comes right back down the field. West Virginia thankfully holds Penn State to a red zone field goal, but now it's 24-7 into the 4th quarter. You think, okay, you're probably not going to score 3 times to tie this ball game back up, but hey, at least let's score to make it, something, keep into it. But instead, West Virginia has one last stab at a comeback. They run 47 yards on 5 straight runs by Garrett Green and CJ Donaldson down to the Penn State 47 with a 4th and 2. Love this situation, but the second worst play call, decision, whatever you want to say, I think this is probably the play call for the night, was, a run pass option to Nico. I don't even know if you want to call it a run pass option to Nico Marchiol. I have no idea how it developed from there. Nobody looked open downfield. Nobody looked like they were even trying to get open. I have no idea what this play was. It was just watched from the get-go. Should have called a timeout in that situation. Neil Brown should have got the troops together and look at it, and it's a 4th and 2. Can we get 2 yards somehow, some way? Not out of CJ Donaldson, who just run it 4 straight times. But Markiel sacked for 11 yards, and that's really all she wrote. Penn State scores again. Thankfully, West Virginia countered to at least make it a respectable 31-15 game with a 2-point conversion. That's why I'm not even really going to acknowledge the last touchdown, just for a second here. Ultimately, though, the sack on Markiel ended any chance of a legit comeback, and that's the game right there. So I had a lot of feelings about this game in the similar way that the 2018 West Virginia Oklahoma game kind of went. It was just an unbelievable offense with so much firepower, and especially the way that Aller played, that you had to continue to keep up with them offensively. And we knew this. In the preview, this is how I expected it to go, was that this was going to be an unstoppable force. From an Aller-led offense, and if they could continue to run the ball the way that you knew that they would, and that's what I would say. Like, kind of looking at a big picture overall in this game, I was just incredibly impressed with Drew Aller. I mean, I said in the preview episode, if Aller threw it more than 24 times, I'd be surprised. He threw it 29 times, and I was impressed with the way that he played, as much as talking about that 2018 matchup as I was with Kyler Murray running that Oklahoma offense. I mean, if he learns how to take a little bit off his fastball, because I think there was about 5 drops or so in this game, and they were all because Aller throws the ball so hard at an NFL level that these receivers can't catch it. They really can't. I think that's the issue. I know it was I think it was either a third or a fourth down, and he threw just like a little stop and go route to the wide receiver out of the slot. It was a one-on-one matchup with the West Virginia defensive back, and the receiver just absolutely dropped it. I think there were about 4 or 5 times in which Aller just threw it too hard for them to catch. But I mean, he's got such a quick release in the way that he's able to manipulate the pocket and to be able to step up when he needs to make a throw. I mean, that's NFL level pocket presence. I think he has all of those kind of physical tools, capabilities, knowledge, wherewithal. I was really, really impressed. And that was the thing, that West Virginia just could not keep up with a player like that. There's a reason he's a 5-star, number 1 quarterback recruit in the country 2 years ago. And that's the kind of level, if you want to beat the best, you have to recruit with the best. You have to get NFL type linemen. You have to get NFL quarterbacks. You have to get 2 freshman running backs who average over 150 yards per game last year, and in this contest certainly fit the bill. And then you got to, and even their biggest like wide receiver ad out of the transfer portal, and Dante Cephas, apparently stunk all summer, and then stunk like didn't even play really in this contest. So it's just it's tough. It's really tough. So, what I would also say more so about West Virginia is I just think that West Virginia respected Penn State's corners too much. Don't get me wrong. I think Kalen King, projected to be, again, a top 10, top 15 NFL draft pick. And then I think Johnny Dixon's his name, the other corner on the opposite side of the field, could potentially be another NFL draft pick. I just think way too many passes were thrown to the sidelines and not enough vertically down the field in this contest. Really, West Virginia never presented anything offensively outside of runs with Green and with Donaldson that Penn State couldn't just send the dogs and they'd be, beating, and West Virginia couldn't then beat them over the top defensive or offensively. So by presenting no real vertical passing game, there wasn't really anything that Penn State didn't need to do other than just what it did in this contest, and just put guys on one-on-one coverage. So it is on the receivers. It is on, Green. There were some times in this contest that I thought that Green missed open men. And I think that's something that also, just to this overall theme of, I think, West Virginia fans needing to chill out. I just think that there's some things that Green necessarily needs to clean up. If you recall, how many of his receivers from the offseason either went pro to not get drafted, a la Sam James, Bryce Ford Wheaton, that could have had more eligibility to stick around, even though I don't think West Virginia necessarily needed them to spend NIL dollars that way. But, new game, Newford, Devin Carter. I never saw Jashawn Polk in this contest. Knew Cole Taylor. It was great to see him out there. But so, and then Traylon Davis, guys who are, Ray, obviously a true freshman. So there's a lot of new pass catchers. There's a lot of timing. And I think that Green was just antsy. I think this was, so yes, you can call that game against Oklahoma State last year his first real true like road start, but this was a whole different animal. And that's why, another bigger picture, hindsight is 2020 history. Green was not prepared enough over the last 3 seasons to be ready for this type of a moment. And you can point back to, the 2-4 point of the 2021 season, when that season was a sinking ship already, that somehow, some way, Jared Deggy was able to turn around, beat Texas, get West Virginia to bowl eligibility. But that was plenty of opportunity for Green to have gotten some experience back then and played more. Now, again, I don't know necessarily the way that this locker room works. I don't know the relationship that Neil Brown and Garrett Green has. I'm not privy to those details. But for him getting to this point, a fourth-year player, first true start, expecting him to play to the level that Drew Aller was, it's not there. This isn't uberly critical of Green, though, is what I'm trying to say. But and you heard this during the broadcast, the preparation, how slowly the Penn State coaching staff used Aller last year, but did want to get him in enough contests, playing in 10 games behind a sixth-year senior in Sean Clifford in a season in which they still went up to the Rose Bowl and won. I mean, it's a credit to just the whole product. It's a whole the factory that is Penn State football. And West Virginia just unfortunately has had so many snafus over the last 2-3 seasons of college football that Green has not had the opportunity, or either been presented the opportunity, or not enough things peripherally around Green have gone enough of his way to have been ready to step into that moment on Saturday night and beat Penn State. It was not like Will Grier coming into 2018 against Tennessee, an SEC opponent in Charlotte, and going out there and having 100% full confidence knowing that you were going to win the game. It was the complete opposite. It was West Virginia was Tennessee's, equal in 2023 up against Penn State. So, what I'll say next, going back to some of my 3 keys, I did like how aggressive Neil Brown was on fourth down. You needed to do that. You had to. Thankfully, West Virginia was, I think, like 50-50 or so. I can check the final stats on that as a team. What were they on fourth down conversions? It was a respectable enough number. Let me see. Fourth down conversions. West Virginia was 3 of 6 on fourth down. Yeah, and a lot of, I think 3 of those 6 plays were all ones in which Traylon Davis would come in motion behind Green and push him forward. Zach Frazier and his wide shoulders just knocking people forward, knocking people to create enough running room just for Green or CJ Donaldson to fall forward and get a first down. So I was thankful that Brown was aggressive. Where I would also say I was thankful that Brown pulled out some trick plays. I think that you had to pull out all the stops to potentially win this game. The problem was the execution. The double reverse pass, as I said just a little bit earlier, Carter didn't even really run a route. At one point in time, he ran out knowing like, oh crap, there's a chance really for this play. It's not dead in the backfield. And by that point in time, Green didn't see him far enough down the field to even let loose. So he decided to run. And that's another case in point of Green just feeling as if he had to make a first single read. If it wasn't there, take off and run. And for a lot of moments in this game, if it wasn't for Garrett Green's legs, this would have been ugly. This would have been Oklahoma State of 2 years ago, in which West Virginia just had one of the ugliest offensive performances, of the last 20 years. Green really saved West Virginia with what he could do to get outside the pocket and pick up first downs when plays broke down. The problem is, I think he would have had a better overall game, especially in the passing statistics. I mean, if you look at his numbers for the day, 16 of 27 on the day, passing for just 160. And a lot of that, as we know, was picked up on the 37-yard heave down the field to Devin Carter. That the Green would have just had a better overall performance if he would have just played a little bit more patiently, tried to look at his second and third reads, find open men down the field, and try and hit them. So but then on the opposite side, I think there was some things that Neal Brown has to throw out of his playbook. I think, again, conservative to a fault, Neal Brown. Too many throws to the sidelines, too many bubble screens, and I know you didn't want to throw an interception. So that's where I will give West Virginia some credit here. The turnovers. The turnover battle was not necessarily a question. It was also because West Virginia played conservatively to a fault in the downfield passing game. Was aggressive in the run game, aggressive on fourth downs, tried some trick plays that just didn't go anywhere. I still don't understand the play call to Marchiol and never will. But at least you tried. The Bart Simpson cake gif, at least you tried. And then to the third point, any coaching gaffes, any coaching mistakes. I don't think there necessarily was, but I just overall on the day, I think Neal Brown got about a C grade, an average grade for this contest. It wasn't really great. It wasn't really bad. I think that West Virginia did what it needed to do and on the ground, and I credit CJ Donaldson, and that's why I have to go back, and I think I got to revise my predictions for CJ Donaldson on this season because he is such a weapon. That was not a one-year wonder. He is not a fluke whatsoever now that he's fully healthy. That ankle's nice and, inside his body and not popped out against TCU. He looks great, averaging just 4.5 yards per carry comparison to the over 6 that he had last year as a freshman. So, but that's incredible. The fact that you can almost pick up 5 yards on every single play, just look what that's going to, do for this offense. 8 for 18 on the day and a 17-yard long carry with a touchdown on the day. I think that Neal Brown in this offense went away from him in the ground game at times. And I think that was because they were trying to establish the passing game into the third and fourth quarters. They were trying to get something going to try and get back into the contest, and went away when they were down multiple scores and got away from Donaldson. So I understand what you were trying to do, but looking at just 18 carries, I think in closely contested games, looking down the stretch, looking ahead to Texas Tech, looking to Pitt, looking to TCU, this is times when I'm thinking Donaldson's going to have to average 20 yards a carry or even have more than 20 yards in a contest. So I think he could get over that 240-yard carry mark for the season, which I don't know if West Virginia's seen since back in the days with Wendell Smallwood, or even going back as far as Noel Devine and Steve Slayton. I'd have to check that for the stats of when was the last time that West Virginia had a rusher who rushed over 240 yards for the season. But you got to see more of him, and you that combo between he and Green out of the read option. Not a lot of reads to Green out of the read option on this day. I know he had the touchdown run at the end of the contest where he did run off the read option and scored, and that was nice to see. But for the most part, it was still a lot of CJ Donaldson up the middle, and that's where that West Virginia, if I would say, had some offensive success, it was between the guards with Frazier, Remack, and Brandon Yates, who played an incredible game, making holes up the middle for him to run. So really impressed with that. So, going back to the overall grade for Neal Brown, why it was a C, tried those trick plays, didn't work. That's negative against him. The secondary, and then why it also, lump Jordan Leslie in there as well. There was just so many defensive alignments at times. I think there were some pluses by getting some pressure on the quarterback. To me, Durage getting a sack in this game. The Hawkins pass breakup Beanie Bishop, having a breakup, almost an interception. There were some times where West Virginia's defense did look good in spurts. Lee Koba, I got to give him a huge shout out. 13 tackles in this game with 1.5 tackles for loss. He was outstanding. Trey Lathan looked fast. I mean, he looked so fast. He looked like the fastest man on the field for West Virginia's defense, and being just a redshirt freshman starting in his first contest in this game. And wasn't Anthony Wilson around the ball at every single time? I think I recognize why he might not be, was a projected starter out of media day and then fall camp. He's small. Seeing him on TV, I mean, he's really small compared against those Penn State linemen and some of West Virginia's defensive linemen. He's tiny, but man, he's around the ball and he's making plays. So I think there were some individual successes defensively, but overall, as a whole, full team defense, I was really disappointed with some of the misalignments and pass defense, because this wide receiving core wasn't, I don't think, the best receiving core that West Virginia is going to face all season. Really impressed with Smith Lambert on what he was able to do. But it was a lot of times it was Penn State receivers just making wide open catches with little contest between them, with a lot of space around them getting separation. So, that's, I think, in a nutshell, really the much more of what I want to say about this game was, I think there were, like I said in the preview episode, West Virginia could have played a 95% A grade and still lost this contest. And they didn't play a 95% game. I think that, some of the missed opportunities in the passing game, that fourth down play, as I mentioned, with Green overthrowing Traylon Ray and Cole Taylor in the second quarter. I think the bomb down the field to Preston Fox, for whatever reason that play was called, another pivotal moment to stay in this game. And then the Markey All fourth down debacle, just some head scratchers. And overall, I really do think it was just because of the talent disparity. West Virginia has some pieces, and I think having just some pieces is going to potentially win this team 8 games this year, including a bowl game. So that's why people need to chill the hell out. Because if you look around college football this past Saturday, Texas Tech lost to Wyoming, Baylor lost to Texas Tech, and while Oklahoma still looks dominant and to potentially win this contest or win this league, and so does Texas. Also, TCU, the defending national champion, went on the road and lost to Colorado, who was 1-11 last year. So throw last year's records out the window. It's a new season, as I was trying to say all summer long about the national, Big 12, local media, whomever, is that this team is not the 14th best team in the Big 12 conference. And this schedule, for as much as people wanted to give it, it's the hardest or third hardest schedule in college football, it's really not. You needed to get this one out, out, and it's over with now. We're looking ahead, already on to Duquesne, already ahead, also looking to Pitt in 2 weeks. So big atmosphere that West Virginia held its own. That you got in, you got out. Yeah, I don't think I want to hear the press conference to hear about any injury situation, because I think we had a few. Mike Lockhart went out at one situation. I think Trey Lathan went out at one situation. I know there were a couple guys. Jacoby Spells didn't play in this contest. Some other I don't think we saw Rodney Gallagher either, but I don't think he was dealing with any sort of injuries. I just think some of the guys who are in some of the rotational or second string situations for West Virginia didn't play in this contest, so something to monitor. But you got out of Penn State, pretty much healthy. You got out there. I know that Penn State scored at the very end to cover, but I wouldn't expect anything less from James Franklin. He's an egomaniac. And I think what Brown said at the end of the game was the perfect situation is what comes around goes around, and there will be an opportunity to get him back at some point in time. So Penn State comes back down to Mountaineer Field next year. So we'll see what happens in that contest. See if there's anything of a carryover from that moment and how that game ended to potentially winning. But this is it's the Roman Coliseum, really is. And there's a lot of the dark underworld of transfer portal and high school recruiting that we don't necessarily know about, that, probably, that I'm sure that Neil Brown and James Franklin don't like each other, and I'm sure their staffs don't like each other. Being in close proximity, as I said, it's the triumvirate, the Pitt, the Penn State, and West Virginia, the three regional D1 powers, and even you can count Maryland as the fourth in there and make it a quadrant. They're all in this same region together, all recruiting against the same ones, and Penn State is the top dog. So I'm sure there is some animosity between the two of them. Brown even just being there 5 years to James Franklin's 10, and probably had some animosity against Dana Holgorsen, even though that West Virginia never played Penn State years ago. So thanks for tuning in for this video. I'd love to hear your comments. You can either leave them here on YouTube or on Twitter X, and you can follow me at Carson_Fox27. I'll be back on Thursday night, and we can talk about the Duquesne matchup. And I think I have some interesting thoughts for this game that you'll want to tune into that episode of how that West Virginia can handle its quarterback situation for that game. So, but make sure to stay tuned for that one. Again, love to hear your comments. I'll respond to as many as I can. And this was a game that West Virginia just needs to put in the rear view mirror. You can kind of burn the tape on it. There are so many programs across Division I college football that are starting out week 2 0-1, half. So it wasn't like West Virginia was going to go undefeated. And even if it was, this would have been the signature moment of West Virginia football, in an upset capacity of the last 40 years on the road. So if this team goes out there, wins the Big 12, and goes 11-1, we're not even talking about this game. We're talking about West Virginia potentially in a college football playoff or something like that. So if that's the worst case scenario, then I'll take this kind of defeat. So get out of it, move on to week 2. But thanks for tuning in. Hail West Virginia. Talk to you next time.